In the fifth epoch, on September 9th, 1349, the end of the world began in the city of Tingen. A woman was screaming, and a destructive monster seemed to emerge from her. A man tried to fight this monster to destroy it, but unfortunately, the monster managed to defeat him, knocking him to the ground. Then, the monster exploded, and the world ended. Suddenly, another person appeared, flying in the air, and strange things happened to him. It seems the person who was fighting the monster was reincarnated into someone else's body, and went back in time to June 28th, 1349. This person had a wound on his head that suddenly began to heal. We learned this person's name is Klein when some ghost called out to him, and Klein understood that he had come back to life. The scene shifts to a house where two people have been murdered. Investigators arrive to look into the matter. The investigator says the two people are Welch and Naya, and they were killed in one of two ways. Either suicide, or they were sacrificed in a black magic ritual, which awakened an evil power. These two had a connection to Klein. We see Klein getting dressed and reading a diary belonging to the original Klein. It contained information that Klein was an expert in spells and magic, and that Welch had brought Klein a notebook from the fourth epoch. They had deciphered some of the codes in this notebook. Klein started reading about all the strange things that had happened, wondering if what was written was real or not. What caught his attention was that the notes for June 27th were missing. Then, a note appeared in the diary, saying that on a certain date, the world would end and everyone would die. This shocked Klein, but he suddenly dropped everything when he heard his sister's voice, who had just woken up. He tried to hide everything so as not to shock her, but a gun was still visible on the desk. Klein managed to grab it at the last second, but his sister, Melissa, noticed something strange was going on and heard the sound of the gun as Klein tried to hide it. When she asked about the sound, Klein told her it was the clock and that it had stopped again. His sister looked at him with disdain, went and fixed the clock, and gave it back to him before leaving, which made him feel foolish. After that, Klein noticed the wound on his head had completely healed. He thought maybe he gained a healing ability when he was reincarnated. He started to wonder if what happened to Klein was a suicide or a crime, because Klein's memories weren't clear to him yet. However, he was sure that many strange things had happened and would happen because of the notebook he had. He then began to remember that he was always unlucky and a failure most of the time, which is why he had used a good luck charm before he went to sleep. But his sister interrupted his thoughts when she brought him breakfast. She told him to rest in bed if he was confused because she noticed he was tired. She asked him to get fresh bread and not to leave his breakfast out for long because it would spoil quickly due to the heat. Then she told him she would bring him meat today but would be a little late, as the meat was a reward for Klein looking for work so hard lately. Klein was touched by his sister's words, said goodbye to her, and she left for school. Klein thought that maybe his sister wouldn't find him when she returned because he decided to stay away from the house so as not to put her in danger, but he hoped things would go well. He then went to get her the bread as she asked. The shop owner welcomed Klein, congratulated him on his graduation, and said he was a special person who would find an excellent job soon. Klein noticed someone was watching him from outside the shop. He took the bread, thanked the lady, and left. He was walking through the city streets, observing everything, and was amazed by what he saw, feeling like he was in a parallel world compared to his previous life. As he walked, the sound of people playing cards caught his attention, and he was surprised they had games like the ones he used to play. He continued on his way, thinking about what had happened to him and what this place he was in now was. Meanwhile, a coin fell from his pocket. When he tried to pick it up, he felt someone approaching and immediately got his gun ready. But it turned out to be a clown inviting him to the circus. Klein accepted his invitation and left, but he noticed that people were following him, so he quickened his pace to avoid them. He then entered a tent to hide and observe the situation, but it turned out to be a fortune teller's tent, and she invited him to sit with her to know his future. Then we see the first person who was watching Klein heading toward him, but when that person saw the other person, he quickly left and moved away from Klein. Meanwhile, the fortune teller insisted that Klein sit down to know his future. She told him that since he was her first customer, it would be free. And indeed, Klein sat down. Klein asked the fortune teller if the card reading was also free. The fortune teller got nervous and said it was, but Klein knew that nothing in this world was free. He began to shuffle the cards. The fortune teller asked him what he wanted to know. He told her he wanted to know about his past, present, and future. The fortune teller started drawing 3 cards and placed them in front of Klein, telling him the first card was for his past, the second for his present, and the third for his future. She asked him which card he wanted to reveal first. The card was the Fool, which is the beginning of the card sequence and means a new beginning. At that moment, the real fortune teller arrived, and it turned out the current one was an imposter. The person who was watching Klein tried to enter the place, but Klein noticed him and left quickly. After that, Klein returned home and began preparations to perform the ritual. He put everything in its place, then went to the middle of the room and began. The papers around him started to fly as he chanted, but when he finished, he found that nothing had happened and he was shocked. But suddenly, Klein felt a headache and heard words being said, "Do not seek trouble." Then strange things started to happen, and it seemed the ritual had succeeded. Red spheres appeared around Klein, who was screaming from the pain. Then he suddenly found himself floating in a strange place, surrounded by strange red and blue specks. These specks began to circle around Klein, but suddenly, the scene shifted to a strange woman also chanting a ritual in the name of the Hall family. We also see a strange man holding a bottle, also chanting a ritual, and he seemed to feel something that shocked him. Then we see that the girl who was chanting the ritual was transported to the place where Klein was, along with the strange man. It seems the red dots belonged to the girl and the blue dots belonged to the man. The girl asked Klein about the place they were in. Klein was shocked and didn't understand what was going on. He even thought he was the one who had summoned the man and the girl with his ritual. Then the girl asked if Klein was the master of this world. After the girl said this, Klein thought about it, and a real world began to build around them. Klein then thought that everything he thought and said was actually happening, which meant he could use the gray fog. And indeed, he was able to use it. Klein thought that he really seemed to be the master of this world. Meanwhile, the man asked him, "Who are you, sir, and where are we?" Klein began to think about who he was. Was he really Klein? Or was he Joe Mingrui? Then he went and sat on the ruler's chair, and the world finished building. Klein then told the man and the girl, "You can call me the Fool." The man said to him, "Mr. Fool, who are you and what are you going to do now? This is considered an assault." Then the girl said to him, "Are you done with your objective? Can we go home now?" He told them, "Of course, if you want that, and ask me now, I will send you home." Meanwhile, Klein was thinking about the man and the woman's identities because he couldn't see them clearly. He said the girl seemed like a naive teenager, while the man seemed mature and cautious. The girl was happy and said she had always dreamed of having an adventure like this, and asked what she could do to become a Beyonder. Let me tell you about the meaning of Beyonders. Beyonders are people who can obtain various supernatural abilities from 22 different pathways on the Beyonder tree by consuming certain potions, which we will discover later, and climbing the Beyonder ladder, which consists of a sequence of 9 floors. The lower the sequence number, the stronger the person becomes, meaning sequence 9 is the lowest rank and sequence 1 is the highest rank. Now we return to Klein, who did not understand the meaning of the word Beyonders and had never heard of it before. So the fool used his intelligence and told the girl, "The other person can answer this question for you." The other person was surprised how the fool knew he knew the answer and told the girl, "You are from the city of Lowen. If you want to become a Beyonder, you must first go and join the Church of the Evernight Goddess or some other churches. And although there are people who can never become Beyonders because they don't have the ability, Beyonders really exist and fight the dangers of the darkness." The girl said she wanted to become a Beyonder without losing her freedom, because that's what would happen if she joined a church. So he suggested she go and join the royal family or a noble family, but she couldn't do that either, so she asked if there was another way. The man told her there actually was a way, and he had it because he had 2 sequence 9 Beyonder potions. One is called the Seer potion and one is called the Spectator potion, and he explained the advantages of each. Meanwhile, the fool was thinking, did his ability to summon these people and use the gray fog mean he was already a Beyonder? Meanwhile, the girl told the fool that she had made a deal with the man and wanted him to be a witness to it, but she asked him to accept other meetings, which shocked the fool because he still didn't understand. Then the man said to him, "Sir, you have power beyond our imagination, and we appreciate your choosing us, so let me handle the trivial matters that you don't have time to deal with." The fool was thinking that if he continued meeting with these people, many of his secrets would be revealed, but dealing with this mysterious world might help him return home, so he agreed to the meeting and set a fixed time, Monday at 3 in the afternoon every week. The girl was happy and suggested they use aliases, both she and the man, because they couldn't use their real names. She suggested that since their master was using an alias from tarot cards, she would also use one, and her name was Justice, while the man called himself the Hanged Man. Meanwhile, people were knocking on Klein's door in the real world, which made him lose focus, and the mysterious world began to collapse, but he controlled the situation and regained command. Then he said the meeting was now over, and each of them returned to their real world. When Klein woke up, he realized it was the police knocking on the door. He hid the gun and went to open the door, shocked to find that the person knocking had the rank of detective. When he opened the door, he was stunned to see that the detective was the person who had been following him while he was walking in the city. Klein said to him, "You were the one following me," and the detective smiled and said, "Let's just say I was protecting you." Then the 2 detectives entered Klein's house. It seems they also have powers and are considered Beyonders, but we'll discover this during viewing. The important thing is that Klein was shocked when he learned the news about Naya and Lish, that they had committed suicide, which he couldn't believe. The detective told him that at first glance, the scene indicated suicide, and asked if Klein had seen anything strange. Meanwhile, the other detective was reading Klein's notebook and read a sentence that said, "Everyone will die," and asked Klein, who was shocked and didn't know what to say. He sat on the bed and said he didn't remember anything. The detective told him, "Never mind that. There's evidence you visited Mr. McGovern's house on the 27th. Klein replied, "You may not believe me, but I don't remember anything except what's in my notes." The detective said the important thing was that Mr. McGovern had lost a gun, and he was sure they would find it here. Klein showed them where the gun was and said he woke up yesterday to find the gun beside him, having been unconscious and in a position suggesting he had tried to commit suicide, and since these events, he had lost many of his memories. The detective said that what Klein was saying matched the conclusions they had reached, but even if they were sure Klein was telling the truth, they needed to use their methods to verify, so they would send Klein to a spiritual medium to search his memories and verify his statements. Then the other detectives said that generally, they were happy that Klein was alive and well because in incidents and crimes like this, all parties are usually dead. The detectives then left, taking Klein with them, who was terrified and afraid they would discover he had come from another world. But his thoughts were interrupted by a child running away after stealing bread from a bakery, with the baker chasing him. The detective caught the boy, but the boy tried to escape and dropped a piece of wood on the horse attached to the detective's carriage, which created tension around them. Klein seized the opportunity and began to run until he reached a distant place and started walking, exhausted. Meanwhile, water was about to fall on him, but suddenly time stopped. Klein understood that there was a beyonder nearby and tried to escape. He thought he had managed to escape when he got into a carriage and asked the driver to move immediately. When he was sure he had moved away from the detectives, he asked the carriage driver to stop, but the driver didn't stop, and it turned out that the carriage driver was one of the detectives. Suddenly, Klein woke up from his sleep and thought he had been dreaming, but the detective appeared before him again and introduced himself as Nighthawk Dan Smith. Klein was shocked by this person's ability to manipulate his dreams. Dan told him they are very powerful at night. Klein didn't understand why Dan was speaking in the plural, and suddenly the world around them began to move in a strange way. Then a girl appeared behind Klein, choked him, and asked him to relax, saying she would be gentle with him. Klein lost consciousness, and when he woke up, he found himself in a strange place. He saw his father and mother, but the girl interrupted him. Klein understood that this girl was the spiritual medium who could see his memories. Then the medium appeared, grabbed Klein, and asked him about the Antigonus family's notebook, but he couldn't remember. She then asked him what he was doing the day Lish and Naya were killed, so he took out his gun and committed suicide. Then he woke up and found the medium telling Dan that Klein was telling the truth, but regarding the missing memories, they had disappeared like the spirits of Lish and Naya, and she couldn't track them. She also said she had never seen anything like this before, and asked Dan to be careful because the matter was dangerous. Dan then said that since the notebook was still missing, it meant Klein was still in danger, and they were not guardians and wouldn't be able to protect him. Dan then offered Klein to join them and become one of the Beyonders, which shocked Klein. The next day, we see Klein walking down the street, a card for a city tavern in his hand. He remembered Dan's words telling him, "If you want to join us, go find someone named Wright at the Hound Tavern." Klein was thinking that joining Dan's Nighthawks team would be good cover for him, so he headed to the tavern. When he got there, he found the place chaotic, full of animal betting and fights between men. Klein was nothing like them. To them, he looked like a baby. One of the men was about to pick a fight with Klein, but Klein avoided it. Then he went to talk to Wright, who was angry. Wright asked Klein who sent him there. When Klein told him Dan did, Wright said, "Follow me." Wright then put Klein in an elevator and sent him to a strange place called Blackthorn Company. Next, Klein went to the hostess, Roseanne, who was asleep. When she woke up, she said she knew Klein was coming and told him to follow her. We also saw the detective there. Then Klein started going down the stairs with Roseanne. They met a quiet girl named Royal, and then they continued on their way. As they walked, Roseanne introduced Klein to the place. They saw a weird guy named Frey on their way, who was experimenting on humans, and another guy walking alone named Kinley. When they reached the captain's spot, Roseanne asked Klein to go in alone because she was scared of the captain, even though he was a nice person. So, Klein went in alone and found a huge door. When he entered, Dan was already there. Dan then gave him the membership papers for Unit 7, outlining its terms. Klein was surprised by their headquarters, so Dan told him this place was just a cover, and they had many other spots like it because they were the specialized team dealing with supernatural stuff. Dan welcomed Klein, who was super happy to join, but Dan warned Klein that he could lose control of himself. Because of this, Dan asked Klein to grab a candle and follow him. Klein was shocked by this. Then they entered a place with lots of graves. Dan said these graves belonged to Nighthawks who had lost control, and that's why they honored their memory. Then Klein and Dan started talking about the levels and their sequence. Dan said the church had potions for 4 paths. First, the path of complete insomnia, then the path of the corpse collector, the path of the mysterious intruder, and the path of the seer. Klein could pick any path, but he needed to think carefully and go see the alchemist, Neil, who would help him make a good decision. Then Klein thanked the captain and started to leave. Klein was thinking about which path he'd choose as he walked, feeling really conflicted. Then he got to the alchemist's room. When he opened the door, the place was empty, but suddenly there was an explosion, and the alchemist appeared. Klein introduced himself, and Neil told him he already knew about him and that Dan had told him all the details. Then he advised him to take his time choosing the path. Neil asked Klein to help him tidy up the place, and Klein started doing it right away. Neil was talking to Klein about his life, studies, and experience, but Klein was humble. So, Neil told him he could start by learning easy things and mastering them until he could master difficult things and decipher codes. Then Neil pulled out a diary belonging to Emperor Roselle, which shocked Klein because most of these diaries had vanished. Neil opened the diary and said that for 150 years, no one had been able to decipher them. Legend says whoever deciphers these diaries will gain supernatural power. Neil said he managed to decipher some codes and showed them to Klein, but Klein was shocked because he found that these diaries were written in Chinese, which was Klein's native language in his past life. This made it easy for him to read them. He started thinking about the king's life and its details, reading all the secrets written there and processing them in his mind. In the end, he benefited a lot from this information, but Neil didn't understand why Klein was so spaced out. When Klein tried to say he could decipher some of the codes in these diaries, Neil burst out laughing and said Klein had youthful energy and thought he could do anything, but it was harder than he imagined. Of course, Klein didn't tell Neil he understood what was written so his secret wouldn't be found out, and that he came from another world. Then Klein decided to take the path of the Seer, like his ancestors whom he learned about from the king's diaries. Neil was shocked by this choice. He told Klein that if he took the potion and walked this path, there would be no turning back. Klein said he was confident in his decision. So Neil told him, since you've decided which path you'll take, let's start the rituals right away. He took out his tools and started making the potion. Its ingredients were really weird, and when he finished, it even produced a strange explosion. Neil was shocked by its look and smell and doubted it was drinkable, but Neil started teasing Klein, which made Klein a little embarrassed. After that, Neil advised Klein to drink the potion without hesitation so things wouldn't go badly for him. Klein then looked at the potion, made up his mind, and quickly drank it. The effects started to run through his veins, and Klein felt strange things. Then Neil told him the potion's power was starting to show, and he had to imagine something that exists in this world. And sure enough, Klein succeeded. Then Neil asked him to imagine something that doesn't exist in this world. When Klein tried to do this, strange things started happening, like an explosion and weather changes. Neil was telling Klein to hold it together and control himself, while Klein was imagining a rocket from his old life, and that was the reason for what was happening. Neil tried to help Klein as much as he could, and indeed, Klein managed to imagine the rocket and was standing on it as it flew. Then Klein got lost in his thoughts. In the end, he imagined a spacesuit, which made the place around Neil and Klein collapse. Neil tried to calm things down, and in the end, Klein succeeded in the test. His eye color changed, and he truly became a Seer. Neil congratulated him on his success and told him he was a promising young man. Klein could see Neil's spirit. Neil told him that now he could see people's spirits and know everything about them, like their health condition, for example. But Klein was shocked when he saw two huge eyes above Neil. But Neil told him, don't worry, maybe they're just weather phenomena. But Klein saw someone disappearing in the background. After what happened, Klein was exhausted, so Neil advised him not to use his power too much, because it drains his spirit and could make Klein see illusions. He told him that Leonard, when he first started using his power, used it too much until he fell down the stairs, so Klein needed to use his power carefully. Neil also told Klein how to turn his power on and off. He told him he just had to tap the spot between his eyebrows twice. When Klein did this, it worked. His power stopped, and his eyes went back to normal. Then Neil gave Klein some pointers on using his power in different ways, and told him that was enough for today. But before he left, he had to get his gear, a pistol and special demon-killing bullets. He also told him to ask Dan for his allowances. Klein was happy. Then Klein went to Dan, who was giving him advice and guidance. He told him that with power and uniqueness comes risk, so he had to manage things well and not meddle in affairs that didn't concern him. Then he told him his salary was £3 a week and gave him a full month's salary in advance, £12. Klein was thrilled about this, telling himself he had finally beaten poverty. After that, we see Klein buy a new cane and clothes and start wandering around the city. While he was walking, a carriage suddenly stopped beside him, and the person inside ordered him to get in. It turned out the person in the carriage was Leonard. He gave Klein a picture of a boy named Elliot, the son of a famous merchant. The boy had been kidnapped that morning, and they had to investigate the matter. This made Klein wonder, saying they were only responsible for beyonders. Leonard told him they were currently undercover at a security company, and the boy's father was a regular client. Leonard told Klein not to worry, as it would be an easy task for a Seer. Then, he gave Klein the boy's clothes to track. Klein began to use his powers, and Leonard was impressed that Klein had bought a dowsing rod. When Klein's power activated, the moon turned red, and his power began to spread through the dowsing rod. Klein could see everything the child did, but the strange thing was that the eyes Klein had seen before were visible, following every path the child took. He then started directing the carriage to the child's location, left and right, until they arrived at a strange house on Fourstone Street. When they entered the house, it looked abandoned. They went up the stairs, and the rod pointed them to the child's exact location. Klein then used his spirit vision and saw two kidnappers and the child. Leonard praised him, saying, "Well done, it will be over now." But Klein looked tired again and wondered to himself if he was overusing his powers. Leonard then went to the room and broke in with his power. The two kidnappers tried to kill Leonard, but he dodged the bullet and took down the first kidnapper in the blink of an eye. He then started beating the second kidnapper until he took him down as well. At that moment, a strange feather appeared, and both Klein and Leonard felt a dark power. Klein moved away. The two kidnappers then transformed into a strange monster. Leonard, however, was excited, and the battle began. Leonard wasn't attacking, and the monster couldn't touch him. The monster decided to flee, but Klein noticed it and began to follow it cautiously so they wouldn't be ambushed. The monster then appeared next to Klein, who fired his gun while trembling. The monster flew into the sky and then suddenly fell due to Leonard's power. Leonard appeared in its world, restraining the monster with his power, and then finished it off for good. They were all happy to have saved the child, but suddenly Klein felt something strange and saw the eyes again. When Leonard asked him what was wrong, he said, "Nothing." After Leonard left, Klein said to himself that the real Klein had visited this place before. Afterwards, they handed the child over to his father, and Leonard began to investigate, wondering where these kidnappers got the Beyonder potion that turned them into an uncontrollable monster. Leonard was joking with Klein, telling him he was lucky because it was rare for a beginner to encounter a monster like this. Then Leonard said, "Anyway, I'm happy to work with you," and extended his hand for a handshake, which surprised Klein, but he shook it. Then, Leonard told Klein that something was drawing him to him. Klein told him, "Me too." After Klein left, we see Leonard talking to someone in the shadows. Then we see Klein going to his house, very happy that he was going to tell his sister he got a job. When he arrived home and tried to open the door, he found the place had changed, which shocked him. He felt there was a Beyonder nearby and tried to escape. He then saw a door and went to it. When he entered, he found Klein's diary, and his specific page was flipping quickly until it stopped on the page that said, "Everyone will die, including me." Suddenly, the Fool card appeared and changed the place completely. Klein woke up terrified and thought to himself that he felt the house opposite the kidnapping location contained a clue related to the Antigonus family's notebook. After that, we see a person wandering the city until he reaches the intended address. When he arrived at the house, the door opened on its own. It turned out to be Klein's house. It seems this person is Klein's brother, named Benson. He couldn't believe they would live in a house like this, which made him emotional, and he cried. Then they sat at the dinner table, and this time Klein was the one cooking. Klein's sister and brother were surprised by the delicious smell of the food, so much so that his sister asked him if this was really the first time Klein had ever cooked. When Klein's sister tasted the food, she was amazed. Then, Benson gave Klein a gift, which was a fancy suit. This made Klein say the gift was expensive, but his sister told him that Benson had been saving up for it for a while. When Klein wore the suit, they were amazed because it suited him perfectly. Klein was happy and thanked his sister and brother. He then remembered his parents for a moment, and his brother told him they were family and there was no need to thank them. They were all happy. We then see the person who was watching Klein being tortured by Dunn. Dunn was able to discover the location of the Antigonus family's notebook, and they knew from the seal on his neck that he was from the Secret Order, the organization responsible for leaking the Antigonus family's notebook. Leonard then said that it was no wonder this person was watching Klein, and also that if the organization wanted something, they wouldn't give up easily. Therefore, Dunn decided that they had to find the notebook as quickly as possible before the Secret Order found it. At that moment, Dunn's assistant came and told him that Klein had found a clue regarding the notebook. We see that Klein went to a place with a dead lady and couldn't handle it, but Captain Dunn helped him. Leonard found a message written there. "I came here, and I found the notebook." But while searching the place, they didn't find the notebook. They also learned that the deceased person's son had disappeared. Therefore, Leonard took out a picture of this person and gave it to Klein, who used his cane and power to find the location of this person. When Klein started using his power, his cane started moving strangely and was about to hit him, but Dunn intervened and grabbed it, saying that there was a tremendous force interfering so that they couldn't find the location of Piper, the deceased person's son. Therefore, Dunn will ask for help from the Holy Cathedral Knights, as there are many ways to find the person. After that, they moved to a strange place, and he gave Klein the topaz pendulum, which is a pendulum that helps amplify the communication between spirits and will help Klein a lot in his mission today. We learned that the Holy Cathedral Knights allowed the use of a dangerous Grade 2 artifact to help them find Piper. This artifact is now being brought to Tingan City. It is a sealed relic, and it is one of the rare items used by Beyonders. Some of these tools possess mysterious power, and others possess destructive power. Therefore, they are placed behind certain barriers in different places. By the way, Grade 2 means it's a dangerous tool. At that moment, we see that the team members arrived with the artifact. Dunn then introduced Klein to the rest of the Nighthawks, then introduced the rest of the members. First Harrison, nicknamed Nightmare of Sequence 7, then Borgia, the Gravedigger of Sequence 8, and finally Daly, the Spirit Medium of Sequence 7, who was welcoming Klein. But Harrison objected to Klein's arrival on this mission because it was dangerous, and Klein's offensive ability ability was 0, but what preoccupied Dunn at that time was the artifact. When he learned that they would be using this artifact in the mission, he objected because this was considered a major risk. But Harrison said that they were looking for Piper, and there was a rumor that he was from the Antigonus family, and if this rumor was true, they would not be able to find him except with a tool made by this family. Then Harrison ordered everyone to do as he did, so that he could activate the tool without endangering anyone. But Klein felt a burning sensation from the way the tool was activated, and didn't understand what was happening. When Harrison uncovered the artifact, it was in a box and started moving, which shocked Klein. When the box was opened, a small mummy in the shape of a clown came out. Klein said it was a cute doll, but things quickly changed, and the other face of this doll appeared and took control of Klein and was about to strangle him, but Leonard intervened. Klein started running away from the doll because he was afraid of it. Dunn then told him that it seemed to be following him because he had obtained a clue about the Antigonus family's notebook, since this doll interacts with everything related to this family. Then we learned that this doll is capable of controlling 2 or 3 people close to it, but it will be freed from its control with a strong slap, like what Leonard did. Klein was still trying to escape, and the doll was following him, but suddenly the doll got very angry and started to erupt when it saw Piper's coat. At that moment, Harrison confirmed that Piper was from the Antigonus family and ordered them to start tracking him immediately. The Nighthawks team was walking around the city while doing the special movement for the artifact, and Klein was feeling embarrassed, but Leonard saved him and told him that he could stop now. The team was taking carriages to search. Then we switched to a strange person using black magic to perform a spell, and he was using Piper in the notebook, and Piper was the sacrifice. Then we see a strange person with a clown face, saying that he was late and the notebook was absorbed, but he heard the sound of the Nighthawks carriages, and said it seems like an opportunity to turn things around. When the Nighthawks team arrived at the place where Piper was, Klein was doubting the ability of this doll, but Dunn interrupted his thoughts and asked him to do his job. Klein started using the pendulum, and said that there was something very dangerous in the warehouse. Indeed, the doors opened, and red winds came out covering the place, which scared the horses. It seems Piper has turned into a rampaging monster. The Nighthawks members prepared to eliminate Piper, who went crazy when he saw the artifact. Then we see that Dunn asked Klein to take care of himself and not interfere, and the rest of the members started attacking Piper. They were all united in their attack and surrounded Piper from all sides and were about to eliminate Piper, but unfortunately, an explosion happened that changed the course of things and made Piper lose control of himself. At that moment, Dunn realized that they were not facing an ordinary monster, but a walking corpse. The Nighthawks members continued to attack, and Daly tried to find the weakness of this monster. Dunn was surprised by the power of this monster, and said that all their attacks had become limited due to Piper's merging with the notebook. But Daly told him that she had found the monster's weakness and asked everyone to control the monster for 3 seconds. The rest of the team started doing this, and Dunn and the others were making crazy and very strong attacks until they were able to restrain the monster. But in a moment, everything changed when Klein felt something strange. The notebook started to light up in red inside Piper's body, and suddenly a devastating attack exploded and seriously injured Dunn and Leonard. Harrison was trying to contain the attack, but it turned out that the target was the artifact. Then Harrison started attacking again and hit the monster with his sword, but this attack was not enough because the monster reversed the attack and threw Harrison away. Dunn was trying to manage things with his serious injury. At this moment, Klein finally intervened and used a tool to hypnotize the monster and succeeded in this. Daly then seized the opportunity and executed the final attack and managed to eliminate the monster completely. After this, Dunn was worried about Daly and went to check on her and started giving her treatment. Meanwhile, Klein heard something strange, and when he reached the source of the sound, he found a strange notebook. At that moment, the person with the clown face appeared and tried to attack Klein, but Dunn attacked him, and it turned out that he was using a shadow clone, and this person started running away. The Nighthawks members' goal was to secure the notebook and secure the artifact, and they started trying to catch this person, and Klein remembered that he was the same person he saw in the circus earlier. The battle between Harrison and the jester was intense, but Harrison couldn't land a hit. Even Leonard intervened, and the jester launched an explosive attack from his face. None of the Nighthawks were able to hit him, and Klein was astonished by this. He analyzed the jester's movements, came up with an idea, and tried it out, successfully hitting the jester. The jester decided to unleash his power and tried to attack Klein, prompting all the Nighthawks to protect him. However, they discovered that the attacker was just a copy, while the real jester was standing back, targeting the ancient artifact. He succeeded in his plan and hit it, causing the bag to open and the doll to emerge once more, taking control of the area. This time, the doll dominated everyone present, and Klein tried to save himself. He started thinking of using a fog spell to escape back to his world and and began reciting the incantations until he succeeded. He considered that the doll's power had increased due to the note. Realizing the person with the jester's face aimed to release this doll to put everyone under his control. Knowing that staying in this world would endanger his friends, he decided to use the pendulum to cast a spell and safely return to his friends. When he returned, he found the jester talking to him, wanting to make a deal. If Klein surrendered the Antigonus family notes, he would release Klein and his friends. He then promised Klein a gift, a way to elevate him to the 8th rank. Klein was conflicted, wondering if what the jester said was true or a lie. The jester attempted to deceive him, insisting that all his friends were asleep and that what happened would remain a secret among them. Yet Leonard was aware of what was happening and urged Klein for a quick response, as their time was running out. The jester then shocked Klein with a comment we didn't hear and used a strange weapon, almost touching Klein with it. But Klein grabbed the weapon, shocking the jester, and then Klein took advantage of the moment to attack. We then see the effect of the doll was not over, as it took control of the jester, allowing Klein to take the opportunity to finish him off with 2 shots, one to the neck and the other to the head. It turned out that this jester was part of the secret organization. Suddenly, the jester stood again and said the name Hornatsis before dying. The battle ended. They regained control of the ancient artifact, and everyone started checking on each other. Then Leonard approached Klein, telling him he wanted to save him, but it was Klein who saved everyone. He then whispered to Klein that he was aware of what was going on, which made Klein call him a narcissist. After that, they returned the ancient weapon to its place, and the mission ended successfully. Dan told Klein he knew Klein was curious about what was in the notes, but the Knights Templar had to verify them first before allowing Klein to see the contents. Dan began praising Klein, saying his performance was outstanding, that he saved everyone, and thwarted the secret organization's plan. He promised to inform the Knights Templar of Klein's exceptional skills, and that he would soon be a permanent member. Klein was amazed that someone who had done all this knew that the note would generate dangerous power, so why didn't he do it away from Tengen? Dan explained that those with evil plans always make wrong decisions. Klein then looked at the jester's body, shocked that he had killed someone. Captain Dan reassured him that it was necessary to save many lives. Klein reflected on what the jester had told him before dying, that he knew the 8th rank opposite the Seer was the jester. After that, he met the rest of the Nighthawks to say their goodbyes. Here, Harrison started acknowledging Klein's strength, saying he was the first person of the 9th rank to defeat someone from the 7th rank. Klein insisted it was all just luck, but Leonard began analyzing the situation, which annoyed Klein, insisting it was merely luck. In the end, Harrison stated that Klein was the most skilled Seer he'd met in his life, and that a bright future awaited him, which made Klein blush. Klein began experiencing strange things, prompting Dan to tell him to rest. Klein started reflecting on everything that had happened, and decided it was time to visit the university and see his teacher. We then moved to the university, where Klein was speaking with history teacher Igers, asking him about Hornassus. Klein began narrating everything that had happened to him related to the Antigonus family notes and the mountains of Hornassus. The teacher mentioned he had heard something similar before, which excited Klein, but he quickly crushed Klein's enthusiasm by suggesting it was probably just a coincidence in the roots of the words. Klein asked the teacher to contact him if he got any information about these matters, and the teacher agreed. Klein decided it was time to leave, thanking the teacher for the gift. He told him that he was the one who deserved thanks for his years of teaching. The teacher warned him to be cautious in his work, as there were forbidden areas that Klein should not interfere with to avoid trouble. Klein assured him he would take this advice seriously. After Klein left, the teacher began pondering his words, revealing a tattoo behind his ear that was not clear, and then a strange power emerged from the teacher's shadow, seemingly hinting at something beyond Klein's understanding. In a dark night, there was a mysterious man torturing his servant for failing to retrieve and decipher the Antigonus family notebook. The servant had failed his master from the Aurora Society and was about to face death for this offense. The servant desperately pleaded for his life, explaining that the notebook appears ordinary due to protective magic, which is why he used several people as sacrifices to decipher it, but they all died, and the cipher ended up in the hands of the Nighthawks team. Because of this, his master decides to cut out his servant's tongue and was about to end his life. The servant begs, saying that one of the sacrifices, Klein, is still alive and can give the Aurora Society what they need. The servant was granted one last chance and left alive, returning to work, knowing that failure means being torn to pieces before he can say a word. Meanwhile, Klein heads to Nighthawk headquarters, where old Neil teaches him ritual magic to enhance his abilities as a seer. Neil warns that someone of Klein's low level will need outside help to perform the rituals safely, and should never seek help from the darkness lest he drift toward the abyss. Klein watches Neil prepare the rituals, wondering if his own fate-changing ritual was black magic. Neil creates magical boundaries, lights candles with spiritual power, and begins chanting. Klein expects something epic, but his mouth drops open when the old man asks for help repaying his 30-pound debt. After Klein confronts him about this mundane request, Neil laughs and takes him outside to show him the power of magic. They find a wallet on the ground belonging to a wealthy person. Klein suspects Neil's intentions, but Neil assures him that ritual magic has always been pure, and there's nothing suspicious about stealing from a noble. A carriage arrives with the wallet's owner, making Klein wonder how Neil will handle handle the situation. But Neil returns the wallet to its owner and receives a 30 pounds reward, shocking Klein again. Neil begins lecturing Klein about trusting magic, explaining that anything is possible with magic as long as you don't harm anyone. After that, Klein was thinking about Emperor Rosel's journals on how to become a good Beyonder by digesting the potion and acting like the chosen Beyonder class, but his thoughts are interrupted when a girl named Angelica approaches with a flyer for the city's divination club. Klein seizes the opportunity, believing it will help him act like a seer. Inside, the diviner Glacius predicts Klein's future, saying that he won't return to his destination anytime soon, but it is possible in the long run. This gives Klein hope. When Glacius starts coughing heavily, Klein taps his forehead to see his aura and advises him to see a doctor to check his lungs and eyes. Glacius asks if Klein is a doctor, but Klein reveals that he is a seer. While registering, Angelica mentions that their best diviner, Vincent, had predicted the appearance of a distinguished seer, piquing Klein's curiosity. She tells him that he's late because Vincent is about to finish his lecture on mirrors. Then the girl leads him to Vincent's class, where Klein observes from the entrance, noting that Vincent uses white magic and doesn't seem suspicious. As the class ends, Klein notices Vincent handing a girl a gift. When the girl runs past Klein, he feels a terrible sensation. Ignoring his intuition, he assumes he's misreading the situation. Then Klein introduces himself to Vincent, and the two sit down for a chat. Vincent reads Klein's fortune and is amazed by his superior abilities, offering him some helpful advice on how he can use family and social gatherings to achieve what he hopes for, shocking Klein and causing him to sink into thought. Then he stood up and thanked Vincent for the information he gave him, but Klein was shocked by the session price and glad that Vincent made the session free this time. After taking his leave and returning home, Klein began working on deciphering Vincent's cryptic advice and how he could use it to return to his world. He draws all the possibilities of using the Grey Fog world and its residents to return home, and also discusses how he can start acting as a seer to realize his dreams. Finally, he decided to direct the rituals to himself and happily draws up his plan to see if it would work or not. Suddenly, he heard a noise at his door, burned the paper he was drafting, and went to see who it was, only to find a turtle doll made by his sister Melissa, telling Klein that he was working too hard and that it was good to relax from time to time, and that this doll was for him to help him do that. However, Klein inadvertently insults Melissa when he tells her that she made a beautiful turtle, revealing that the doll was supposed to resemble a human, not a turtle. Then Klein finds that it's time for him to go to work, and Melissa tells him to relax when he can and invites him to her friend's birthday feast next Sunday. Klein remembers the words family and gathering that Vincent mentioned, and seizes the opportunity to go to the feast at the end of that week with his sister. Later, he summons his special world again, and summons the Hanged Man and Justice, and uses his power as a seer and sees their truth. Klein congratulated Audrey on her success in becoming a spectator. Then he notices that he can see their three symbols, which represent their Beyonder classes, with their own auras. However, their special symbols were confusing, with dual symbolic meanings and incomplete. Then he allows the two to speak freely, and Miss Justice remembers that she has 3 questions she wants to ask them. The first was the role of the spectator, and the Hanged Man decided to answer how spectators remain. Spectators forever and are never in the spotlight, always in the background, observing and calm, and she has to lose control of herself and focus on the meaning of the potion. Thus, he goes on to explain the key to embodying the potion. Klein corrects him and mentions how acting and digesting were key, shocking the Hanged Man when he realizes this and thanks Klein for clarifying. Then the girl asks what would happen if an animal drank the potion because she accidentally allowed her dog to drink some of it. The Hanged Man says that if the dog didn't die immediately or turn into a monster, it probably turned into a Beyonder animal. Finally, she complains about her father's problems and the problems of noble families and how the lion government is failing, so Klein advises her to conduct an open exam for everyone from nobles and commoners to get skilled people to help promote and stabilize the state, surprising them, and they begin to thank him. After that, he tells them that his free advice was a down payment on what he wants, and when asked about his mission, Klein tells them that he wants them to collect the secret Roselle journals for him, shocking the Hanged Man about how Klein knows all these things in the first place. Klein also asked them to cast a spell to improve luck on Sunday, directed at him, and they agreed to this. Then Miss Justice asked to know the spell, and when Klein told them, the Hanged Man was shocked because no one can know this spell, and after hearing this spell, this led to their complete submission to Klein and decided to treat him with greater reverence. Then Klein ended the meeting and returned home, thinking that Sunday was his day off so he could deal with anything unexpected that appeared. From his window, he sees Benson and Melissa and wonders if he can act like a diviner to slowly reveal to his siblings the truth that he has become a Beyonder. After the days happily and peacefully passed, Sunday finally arrived, and the Moretti family was dressed in their finest clothes, heading to Melissa's friend's party. When they arrived there, Klein learned that the friend's sister's name was Selena, the girl he had seen in Vincent's class earlier, but she didn't recognize him. To the point she was telling him he was handsome and her sister Elizabeth, who works in Vincent's Vincent's headquarters also. Suddenly, he heard Alger's voice in his head performing the rituals he was assigned, but he ignored it and entered the party. The atmosphere was lively, and Klein was adapted to the situations, and when he went to get some food, Elizabeth appeared and told him not to worry because Selena doesn't know his identity as a seer yet. After that, his sister appeared, making him nervous, and told him that she hopes he finds a wife and his brother, but Elizabeth is still 16 years old, shocking him with her thinking. Then the girls gathered in a room, and Selena was holding the magic mirror that Vincent gave her. Selena told her friends that Vincent designed it specifically so she could perform mirror magic. The girls watched her chant a spell and activate the magic mirror. At that very moment, Klein felt a dangerous aura emanating from the upper room. Then we see on the other side, Vincent, and a sinister aura was coming out of him, and he was saying, "The time has come, Klein Moretti. It's time for the sacrifice." Klein began to run. When he used his pendulum, he felt a terrible danger lurking nearby. When he got there, he saw the three girls using the magic mirror to see when they would marry some handsome young men. Suddenly, a wild girl appeared in the mirror, shocking Klein and making him realize that the matter was serious and that he would not be able to contact the team in time. Klein noticed that it would be difficult to safely get the girls away from the mirror. It was already too late for Selena, and something seemed to have affected her. Then Klein remembered that he could perform rituals as Neil taught him, and began searching for the supplies necessary to perform the rituals, and noticed that they were all in the room where the girls were, and that he had to be quick before the bodies started falling. But unfortunately, because of the spell and the mirror, Selena hypnotized her friends and turned into a monster and wanted to hunt Klein, who tried to rush and perform the rituals. He already collected the tools and began the chanting and was about to succeed in saving the situation, but Vincent used his power and supplied Selena with some power. Selena stopped Klein before he could finish and began using her power. Klein was trying to kill her with the gun, but it didn't work, and Selena tied him up with her hair and began to draw his spiritual power. Vincent began speaking through Selena's body, angrily asking Klein about everything he knows and what he discovered regarding the Antigonus family notebook. All Klein could think about was his sister, and was regretting that he would be the reason why Melissa would never grow up. After he was about to lose hope, he heard the voice of Miss Justice as she was performing her rituals, granting Klein a new boost of power that he desperately needed. He was already freed from Selena's power. Then Vincent became angry and decided to use his last resort and tore off his arm as a magical sacrifice in a desperate attempt to eliminate Klein, but it was too late. Klein used the rest of his power to finish his spell to save Selena and cleanse her of the evil power, and in the end succeeded in eliminating the evil power with his bullet. This cuts off the connection between Selena and Vincent, and Selena returns to normal. Klein vowed to himself not to involve his family in mysterious and unknown matters again. After that, we see that Vincent tried to escape before his master could end his life, but his master appeared directly in front of his door and crushed him like a fly. Later, Klein took Dan to the divination club and told him that Vincent was the one who gave Selena the mirror, so he might be part of the Aurora Society. When they got there, they found Vincent's body and his arm torn off, and Klein confirmed that the spells there matched those on Selena's mirror. Then Dan used his magical abilities to take a peek at the evil creature of the society, leaving Dan face to face in shock with a creature whose body was completely bound and had one eye. At the same time, Miss Justice wakes up in Lyon on her birthday, and the servants had come to her with her clothes to prepare her. After she was ready, she was very happy and celebrating with her dog Susie, which was the biggest shock to her when she learned that he can now speak like humans because of drinking the potion.